Okay, good afternoon everyone. I hope you can hear me. I hope you can hear me at the back. Good afternoon, good afternoon.
you going to? Good afternoon. Can I get your attention? Yeah, keep us up. Pastor, we gotta go.
Okay, we gotta go, huh?
Yeah, we gotta.
Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome to the launch of Passing the Baton. We are, on behalf rather of the organizing committee, we'd like to welcome you all to this event. We are pleased that you're here. We're humbled by your presence. And just before we get into the program proper, I'm just going to run through a few housekeeping items so that our time here can be enjoyable and most fruitful. Now, our venue is on a split level. We have a lower level and an upper level. We have guests sitting at the upper level. Can you please wave if you can hear me? Thank you very much. And we kindly ask that as the program is preparing to begin, that we keep our phones on silent for the duration of the program. If you wish to take a call, you can always step out of the pavilion to take your call. Secondly, there are washrooms behind the tent. If you need to visit the washrooms, please follow the stone path, and that should take you to the washroom area. Secondly, the book signing moment will offer an opportunity to buy a book if you haven't bought a copy yet, or if you wish to buy a copy for friends or family. So the book sales corner will be at the back on the veranda. At the end of this program, as we come forward to take an autograph from the author, you will have an opportunity to buy a book, a copy or two, and have it autographed by our author. And so without further ado, I'd like to invite our Master of Ceremony to come and kick off this program. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Okay, good afternoon, all guests. Thank you very much. I'd really like to thank all of you for coming early and on time. We are ready to start our program. I want to first and foremost say that I can't acknowledge most of you being invited, but I'd like to really express my appreciation to God Almighty, to the author, for having worked hard over the last few years to get us here. I'd like to thank those who co-authored the book, members of the panel invited, the musicians. We want to put this before God and pray that we'll have a wonderful occasion. Again, for those of you who have not gotten a bottle of water, feel free to put your hand up and you'll be brought for a bottle of water, because it could be a bit of a while and we could have a very good event, and because it could be long, a bit of quenching of your thirst will be important. I'd like to urge those of you in there and here to open the doors. It would be good to just get some fresh air flowing, so keep the doors open, and we'll be good to start.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. A little bit of some excitement. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you. That sounds much better. My name is Peter OBURU, also Dr. Peter OBURU, so any can go. And we're about to kick off. I'm also kicking off because I'm also the timekeeper. So I will ask those who are going to participate in just to keep time and just watch me by flag. We're just trying to make sure that we can track on time properly. At this time, I want to welcome Pastor Ogada. If you can come and kick us off in prayer, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can we all stand for a word of prayer? Let's pray. Our Lord and Father God, we thank you so much this afternoon for giving us the privilege of coming here, Lord, to fellowship together and to launch a book which has been written by your servant. We are praying, Father, for this event from the beginning to the end, that your presence may be here, Lord, to lead and guide. And at the end of this service, Lord, we may all feel blessed. Thank you for this. We are praying, believing, and trusting in the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. Let me introduce myself as well. My name is Paul OBURU. I'm the eldest son of the author, and it's a privilege for me to be one out of many of his children and grandchildren that has been given the honor of introducing him on this occasion. So I'd like to introduce the author. The author is Mr. Aro Solomon OBURU. He's a father of 7. He's married to the one and only Perez Atieno OBURU, who's sitting next to him. He's going to have the pleasure of coming up with Dr. Peter, and he could give us a few remarks and tell us about his journey of preparing and writing this book and what his inspirations have been. Thank you.
Oh, sit down. Let me try studying. Let me try studying.
Okay, you want to stand?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Any is fine. You want to stand or you want to sit?
Let me start by standing.
Okay.
If I find I can't continue,
Okay.
we will.
All right.
All right.
Then why don't we start? Am I on? Okay. Why don't we start by giving? Am I on? It's indeed a privilege and an honor, to be able to participate in this discussion with you. So it's a fantastic.
And birth of this book. To them all, I say thank you. Some are here, some are not. If you permit me, I'll just mention a few who are here. I'll start with Professor Kerr, the old man there and of the academic world, who wrote the introduction of the book. I'll go to Dr. Rose Upondo, also a scholar, who participated and prepared the foreword of the book. I'll go to my colleague and friend, with whom we share quite a lot, Joseph Kwaka, who participated in a lot of proofreading of the book and wrote a review of the book. The others are not here, but to them all I say thank you. The question is, which many may ask, why the title Passing the Baton? That catches the content of the book. I'll tell you, in the athletic sports, there is one sport or game that is called relay race. It is a game in which the participants collectively, if they win, are given the medal. But the game is planned such that each participant or each contestant is given a specific distance to cover, after which he hands over the remaining distance which is specified to cover to another person. And it continues until all of them, as members of a team, complete the race. It therefore means, if you want to win in that game, two things are important. You must work as a team, but each one of you must do his best by trying to excel and beat the others. Hence, the title, Passing the Baton. In the book, the race, the contest is not between anybody. The contest is single. The contestants are single, but dual. In that race, it is the race of handing over the baton to the next generation. The competition comes at the end of them, because everybody is doing it. The question, therefore, how do we compete in life and make sure that each one of us, each family as a unit, excels? If they want to pass over the baton, they must prepare the family for that, the coming family for that competition. How do we do it? In my investigations, I found three very fundamental things. That families, or a family, is the constitutional element that make clans, that makes society, that makes the nation. If in that race the family does not do its well as excellent as those in the running race, that competition of the family, of the community, of the society, and at large the nation, they lose. Hence, we must protect the integrity of the family so that they can give us the capability to win in that competition. I then come to what is it that we call the family. The family is, in its constitution, is founded by the union of one male and the female coming together in the institution of marriage. It is volitional, it is voluntary coming together. And in that constitution, in that union, they both pray to be blessed by children. So the children are the progressors of the family. They are the progressors of the society. They are progressors of nations. The question is, what kind of the children, therefore, the father, the mother, are handing over as those endowed with capability to recharge the society when you are old and you go? What kind of recharge elements have you brought in? It is important that we we prepare our children to replace us. In that preparation, the most important thing which stands out is character. It is the most important thing that stands out in that preparation. It is what will give the quality and the strength and the fastness and the quickness required to win. It is the same thing that will give the quality of decay, the quality to give up, do away with resilience, and therefore surrender before you finish the race. That function is given to the founders of the family, the father and the mother. That is the basic. But then in modern life, this very important institution is facing a lot of challenge. Some of the challenges which are actually eroding the integrity of what has helped this institution to stand. They are running as fast as the communication technology. In consequence, therefore, the founders of the family are now engaged, rather than being engaged in the paramountcy of their successors. They are engaged in passion and hard work to accumulate wealth. I'm not saying wealth is bad, but the pursuit of wealth now takes priority over building character in the children. And you would all agree with me? The recent happenings in the country are very clear. We have seen schools banned. And it's very interesting that those who should have raised the children with character integrity are the ones saying, return the corporal punishment. When the children are at the age of banning the schools, even if they were with the parents will not punish them with use of corporal punishment. They will not cane their children. They want to pass over that responsibility to the state. And with all humility, I say, I've never heard of any state that went to a maternity ward to give birth to children. Children are given birth by their parents. So if we have dysfunctional families, we will have dysfunctional communities, we will have dysfunctional societies. This becomes very important. And where are these attacks that actually are eroding the integrity of the family? One of them, I've said, pursuit of wealth. Wealth does the thing negatively, not because wealth per se is bad, but it robs you of your time to be with your family. So it becomes first claimant and last claimant of your time. You come home when you are tired. Either you are sleeping, for the men, they are sleeping on the sofa set. When they have been reading the newspaper, they fall asleep. For the ladies, they are also tired. And call the house help and say, don't you see this child giving me a hard time? Take the child away. Unfortunately, quite often in this pursuit of wealth, we are so much engaged that at the early time, from infancy to about age 5, we come back home when the children are asleep. And we have therefore lost the bonding time. We have lost very critical age of character formation. The other front of attack to the family integrity comes to us from and values which are affront to the integrity of the family. The most important institution that kept the family unit together was the institution of marriage. Because in the institution of marriage, the man and the woman coalesced, they worked together. They took part in the pride of their children. They spent time with their children. But in this kind of attack, after loss of time with the children, we now have things which are very interesting, and things we ape from communities that have other resources to try to mitigate. If you go to the institution of marriage in raising family, it is the institution of cohabitation. They call it cohabitation. Here we call it come we stay. In that union, in that grouping, there is very little passion for the future of the child. What binds you together is some sort of semblance of love for the woman, love for the man, and last, love for the child. It is not where the child becomes your number one claimant of your quality time. It is no longer where you get worried what your child will be. You wait and your child keep on growing and you say, look, at 18, what you are doing, I will not defend. From the West, that we think, no. Which is higher is the social function of the family, which starts from making sure that you raise the child to be a responsible fellow in the community. Yes, biological functions continue kidogo because you still have to get chakula to nurture the bodybuilding. But the social function is the most critical. And when you have this social function, it is important, the most important thing in character building. So, as a parent, what do? We have seen, and I've said it, that where you have come we stay or cohabitation, affinity, the bond is very weak. And nobody bothers. But most important, a lot of changes that have come up, some of them have come as a consequence of feminism. And what you get Armageddon is called, the biblical one is called that fierce fight, Armageddon. You have Armageddon in the house. Serious, the language is not just cause, language is terrible. At the critical age of the child character formation, people are quarreling in the house. At that age, from age 1 to up, the child does not learn from the lectures that you say, hey, where is Mama Appa? I want to talk to you. They learn by copying what the parents, siblings, and the environment are doing. But to them, the hero is the parent. So if you are beating the mother, you are telling your son that women must be dealt with by beating. If you disagree, chapa ngumi. If you are insulting the father, you are telling your daughter, like men only listen to quarrels. Without quarrels, men will not behave. So, this is the child you are going to release to the society. The child learns. At that age, which is year 1 to year 8, the hero of the person are the parents. Nitamwambia baba, nitamwambia mama, nitamwambia ndugu yangu. But they learn at that time, and hence you find in the Bible, teach the child on the way he should go, and when he grows up, he will not depart. or if he deviates, he will come back. At that time, the brain of the child is substantially like a clean slate, a clean computer without anything in it. And so, your message is written on the clean slate, and it sticks. What, therefore, are we doing? So the character is built between age 1 and age 8. If you have lost it at that time, because unfortunately, that is also the age that we believe now, you must chase the wealth. You must prove your career capability. So your child becomes number 2 on claim of your the value of your time. You come home, the child is asleep. You don't want to talk to the child. You don't bond. Many will say, "Mwaka huu, what is he going to do?" I tell you. And he calls character the tree. Fame is the shadow of the tree. So all these things matter. If we want to charge our society with quality, and first runners that will win us the medal, they must spend their time, we must spend our time in making sure that we inculcate them with the values that make them useful to society. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ms. OBURU. Thank you very much for those comments and for that discussion on the inspiration. We are glad that you actually put a lot of those thoughts and research in a book. So congratulations and thank you very much. I'll go ahead at this time and please ask Professor Kerr if you can come in and please give some remarks. Professor Kerr. There you go.
Thank you very much, the MC. Let me also begin by congratulating Elder Solomon OBURU for this groundbreaking of a book which is very useful to all of us. As I congratulate him, I cannot forget Mama. I call her Nyarimbo, Nyarguchieng Professor. You know, a book of this kind, although Solomon OBURU is the author, but you know, that experience which he has summarized to us a few minutes ago is intensively benefiting, informed by Mama, because the two of them are what he has just told us, that the two come together to form the nucleus OBURU family. And in therefore congratulating this family, Mama cannot be left out. I call it an experience of about maybe, they are now or about 80 years, that's 160, and another 50 years in marriage, another 100 years of experience, summarized in this book of Succession. Of course, the Peters, the ladies are also part of it as the family tree grows and expands. I have a very short, these people, the world is about almost 2/3 water and 1/3 land. And therefore, someone like him, who was the director of fisheries, who succeeded Norbert Odero, who that time we thought was one of the best swimmers, at least in Nyanza and even beyond. What I see in the book partly reflects, actually is a code of conduct for responsible families. I therefore applaud him for this book of 262 pages in 8 chapters, starting with chapter 1. I like the way he puts it. He calls it a strategic redefinition of the family. His experience has led him to conclude that it's a need now to redefine the families the way we knew them earlier on. That beginning chapter helped us to see a challenge immediately, a challenge influenced by the socioeconomic and also technological advances around us. In fact, not too long ago, I asked someone about, they were commenting about books. The young people today don't want the hard copies, which me and I are very keen on. And when I hold a book, to me, it's like holding a newborn baby. I like to read it. But these young ones, they want soft copies. Libraries. You know, Philip here, my friend and my mentor, Bob, and most of you used to have a room somewhere, a library in your office. Even when you retire, you still have a library in the house. These people, I ask them, where is your library? It is somewhere on this telephone or nowhere at all. Or a laptop, which when it goes, there's no trace of it. So their family contact is changing. And after chapter 1, he goes straight to look at the marriage. He spent a lot of time in the marriage. He has already explained some. The marriage institution, which God himself started at the Garden of Eden, is today torn apart. You hear of one day marriage, they have a wedding today, tomorrow they come back from Mombasa, they go different ways. If 1 year, 2 years comes, we are lucky. So what do we do? I like the title that this is passing the baton. Most of people here of my age or your age, our concern is that what are we leaving behind for these young people who are coming behind? The book has those elements. In fact, in one of the chapters, there are 64 elements which it says are critical between the age of 6 and 8, what he has just described, that when they are young, but that critical age of 6 and 8, when they absorb those elements, where are we? In the book is pleading that, look, you parents, spend time, invest time with your family. And I hope that there's no harm repeating this, that time with the families. We are very big. How can we balance work with the time for the family? The other cross-cutting and also arcing issues include raising children, which is in chapter 5. It's spent out on chapter 3. So a lot of time spent on raising children. Then he goes also to chapter 6 on communication. How do we communicate with this new generation whose language, maybe saying, whatever it is quite different from our own. And of course, even the communication within the home is in communication, which can help us keep the family. A happy home or a happy family. How do you nurture or bring a happy family, which you go with later? He also, in the under marriage, he looks at choosing a spouse. Choosing a spouse is a big challenge, and I like the way he cites the Bible. He has many verses. 31, verse 10 up to blah, who can find a noble wife? Actually, his reference or text is the Bible. He has used the Bible extensively in supporting whatever he's telling us, that if we go by the Bible, we can go very far in keeping the family together. I could also remember, I think somewhere as he completes Matthew 22, verse 35 to 40, which talks about love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy mind, and so on and so on. And even so that if we keep that love in the family by loving others, love your neighbor, I think a lot of problems we are going through today could easily be solved. But that aside, apart from some of those cross-cutting issues, he comes at the end as he concludes. I know my time is short, just about 10 minutes. At the end, he concludes with what he called corporate image of the family. What is that corporate image of the family which you strive to build from childhood as they go through your school of the house and then later on with the teachers? That corporate identity is extremely important. You know, families are identified. Some come out very, very clearly. If you are in Italy, you may have heard of the Agnelli family. The Agnelli family is linked to the Fiat. You can see how that succession goes, and you can cite them everywhere, even in Kenya. No wonder our old men, I remember my dad used to tell me that his father, or my grandfather, used to tell his son that, look, so and so, when you are ready, please go to that place. It could be Nyabondo, it could be somewhere Kano, but if you cannot find somebody from that place, go to that other family in this place. And my father told me that one of his brothers ignored what the old men were saying. And that uncle of mine got in trouble. So for young people, these old people, when they tell you, go to that corporate family, they have tested it for maybe about 50 years or even more. They know why when you go there, you are likely to succeed. They know people with whom they are compatible and others with whom they are not compatible. So the book is quite compelling. I would recommend it to the young people who are looking for spouses. There are those who are already married, who are trying to manage families, and even the old ones like ourselves, who are who are now in our sunset years. We can recommend it to others who are coming behind. The book is fairly easy to read. It's well balanced, and I would highly recommend it, even for mentoring. You know, today, counseling, family life, we need to have systems which were there in the past, which we have lost. And he traces some of them. You know, in the past, the boys were taught in the Simba, the ladies were taught in the Danese house, how to handle husbands, how to handle children. We have lost that. And I know that when I came to know Elder, we have been sharing very many things which I'm glad he has put something down. But there are many which we still need to follow and see how best we can remain competitive as a community. In fact, in the book, he's stressing not just the child, the family, the community, the society. How can that help us to improve our approach and our life? I know my time is up, but I say that the book is a lot of information which can help us to have better life and maybe hand over. But again, all of us now where we are now handing over to the next generation. As you hand over, you'll be happy if you know that you are leaving a family that will survive, will go through all the challenges they go through in life. So therefore, once again, I wish you well, and I recommend the book to most of you. You can be able to read it and make some comments and still help us read it. I hope I use my 10 minutes or not beyond. Thank you very much, and God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Kerr. Thank you for that compelling endorsement and for that detailed summary of a number of the chapters in the book. Thank you very much for that. I just also support, as we set up the chairs here for the panelists, we have a very diverse panel, and I'll just, as I introduce them, I'll just ask them to come in front. We have Ms. Ashley Yarrow, Ms. Ashley Arrow is an aspiring advocate currently pursuing her pre-KSL certification at Riara University. She holds a first-class bachelor's degree in law from Kent, University of Kent. Very distinguished in her own right. Ms. Ashley, please. And then we have Mrs. Diana Mwai Kauman. Diana, I know I saw you back there. So Diana is a mother of 2 young children, Malaika, who's 7, and son, who's Enzi. She holds a degree in economics in University of Nairobi. You wanna move me? Okay. University of Nairobi, and a master's in public policy from Andrew Yang School of Policy Studies in Atlanta, Georgia. Welcome, Diana. And we have Mr. Joseph Okello. Mr. Joseph is a founder and chairperson of the Association of Family Business Enterprises, AFBE, in Kenya, that aims to strengthen and support family businesses over generations. You know, he holds a Master's of Business degree from University of Nottingham, and he enjoys reading, traveling, sports, amongst many other things. And he's also a family man with 3 children. Please, Mr. Joseph, welcome. And then we have Professor Thomas Mboya. I know I saw Mr. Mboya earlier. Professor Mboya is an associate professor of mathematics at the Technical University of Kenya, a Commonwealth Scholarship Fellow, director of mathematics and actuarial science at the Technical University of Kenya. And he supervised a total of 6 PhD students and a number of master students. So welcome, Professor Mboya. So I'll just go ahead and, without further ado, just jump into this great panel discussion of these panelists. All right, thank you all. I hope you can all hear us and we're coming out loud and clear. And I think there's some people who are joining us also via the live stream. So we also want to appreciate and just acknowledge those who are able to log on and join us via the live stream. So thank you very much, panelists, for joining us. And we've had a number of comments from the author himself, Mr. OBURU, and Professor Kerr. So I just wanted to kick off here with Ms. Ashley. You know, it's great to have somebody who's a young adult to give us the perspective. We have had a number of perspectives. And one of the things that is being spoken about in the first chapter, as Professor Kerr said, was the redefinition of the family, you know, and the author spoke about that construct of the traditional family being the male and the female and the children. But we know that the family is being redefined with a number of things. From your perspective, what are the young people saying about the changes in the family structures? It would be good to hear your perspective.
Okay, so our generation, we no longer see family as an automatic right that's heavily defined by blood relations and childbearing, but instead we see it as something that's earned through your actions. Great, great. What about you, Professor Mboya? When we swing back to your side, I mean, you have a very distinguished background and you have interacted with a number of students. What's your view and perspective with this redefinition of the family as you see it today?
Thank you so much, Peter. Now, the youth at the moment consider family very, in a very interesting way. One, you find that they start raising family very early in the universities when they're still not yet even prepared. So for me, what I think about a family is a unit that should be able to create a vision and own a vision for the units that is forming a society. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. How about you, Joe, when you think about the family and the redefinition with the interaction in your experience with the different families and the business structure, do you see a number of these dynamics changing?
Yes.
You said you're good now.
Yeah, the view of the family has changed quite a bit, and I think it was captured by the author. I think our society has become more permissive. We're seeing new definitions of family. We're seeing a society where people choose how they want to identify themselves, by their gender, and so there's a lot of change in perspectives of what constitutes a family. But yeah, and this is happening as society keeps changing or evolving.
Thanks, Joe. What about you, Jerry? Are you concerned? What are your views and thoughts with how the family structure is changing? Are you concerned about it, or what do you view with the changes?
I don't think I would say I'm concerned. I think it gives us an opportunity to react to the dynamic world and where the world is going. So it gives us that opportunity. Maybe to just wrap up what my fellow panelists say in terms of the redefinition of the family and contextualizing to what we are going through the pandemic and what family meant to everyone. And mostly it was actually those people who are around us, who were giving us support. Beyond that, in my own personal experience, I have friends who are now family. I can define are my family. I know also, Peter, you have friends who you can define are your family, and that's the continuous redefinition. But it gives us an opportunity to react to the dynamic nature of the world.
Fantastic, thank you. When you read the book, there's a very interesting continuation between the family and society. Actually, I want to invite you to read for us from page 10, a section there where it talks about the connection, the connection between the family unit and society. If you can, maybe just read for us that section, and then we'll pick up on a couple of questions from there.
Okay. The family is, therefore, a profound osmotic agent for infusing wholesomeness of habits and attitudes in a person. From the ancient days to this day, the family has therefore been, and it will continue to remain, the basic building block for formation of society, as well as its ethical integrity by providing inductive inculcation of its youth with societal ethos during their transition to adulthood. Primary auditing of compliance and conformity with the established community's rules by its members, including initializing any corrective actions, is best when initiated and enforced at the family level. Given its ideal characteristics, the family thus positions itself as a vantage unit for formation as well as for transformation of the society. Indeed, moral and ethical integrity or decay in a society is fundamentally an extrapolation of the same at the family level.
Fantastic. Really, when you read that particular portion, and I was reading the book, it really talks about the connection between what happens in the family and the society. That the family remains the building blocks. And there's really an interesting concept there about the ethical values that you pass within the family that, of course, transcends and continues into society. So, Jerry, what from your experience, you are a mother of 2 kids, what are some of the ethical values that you consider when you are raising them up, that you think about passing to them, and how you think that will translate eventually to what they do in society?
Okay. Thank you, Peter. Beyond being a mother to 2 young children, 5 and 7, they are also biracial. And so I will highlight 3 important ethical values that I think I'm trying to pass on to them. One is honesty at this age, at 5 and 7, just for them, being able to feel like that, to feel like they can tell the truth, and there are no, negative consequences, and which then will help them to open up in term, later in life. So honesty is one of them, and it's just always easier to tell the truth. And it's part of learning, if we make mistakes and we own up to those mistakes, it's a part of learning. And the next one is responsibility, just raising children who are responsible. And what I think I'm trying to
pass on to our kids and to the young ones in society.
Peter, you're right. I did not anticipate that question at all. But yeah, I think that there are truths that withstand the test of time, and I think that's what the definition of truth is. But I think, again, as the society evolves, people are coming up with their own versions of truth that I think have an element of perversion. I mean, that they have been doctored, and sometimes they are more self-seeking. But I think there are some absolute or some fundamental truths.
Fantastic, and thank you so much. Yeah, I probably challenge you a bit. I do like the way you say there are an element of perversion. And I think within what the author is speaking about here is really how do we guard that family structure? Yeah. And I think there's an opportunity for all of us to be very firm about what we know is the absolute truth in that family structure. So let me carry on with you, Joe. What about in your family, with your 3 kids? What are some of the ethical values that you are passing on to them, and how are you seeing that? Because I know your kids, some of them are much, much older. So how do you see those ethical values started when they were young up to where they are today?
Yeah, I agree with what Dana said there. I agree with those values, and I think one I would add there is accountability. Yes. Because I see that a lot of our children or the generation now are not very accountable for their actions. And I think it resonates even with what the author referred to is happening in our society today. When we see educational institutions being burnt, I don't think there's a correlation with the consequences of some of these actions. And as parents, we see sometimes parents defend the actions of their children to the extent that they make them not accountable, or they abdicate that responsibility to learning institutions, to other parties. And I think accountability is a key trait that we must embrace, that there are consequences for the actions that we take.
I like that. I want to swing back to you, Ashley. We're talking about ethical values and passing them on to the children so that, of course, that transcends society. I think one of the challenges that we've learned from the book is there's a difference with the way the young people are operating, social media and all that. How do you see some of these ethical values that have been mentioned, honesty, truth, responsibility, accountability? Is there an issue with some of those ethical values with the way we are seeing them, like, for example, in the Facebook, in Twitter, over the internet? As the young people interact, do you see that they're kind of loose with these ethical values? What's your response to that?
Actually, yes, I do think people are a bit loose, especially in terms of accountability. So the thing with social media is it allows you a certain degree of anonymity because you're behind a screen. You're not face to face, so it gives you this confidence to do things you would otherwise not do if you're seeing this person face to face. So for example, cyberbullying. People tell you things that they would never tell you to your face, or they see celebrities or other social media figures and they talk to them and treat them as if they're not real people, forgetting that these are actual people who will see these things and be affected by it. So I think one of the downsides of social media is it has as accountable as they should be.
Fantastic. I like that. I can probably even spend some time just listening to the young people and that, because that anonymity can really give you an ability to say things which are not ethical and kind of hide over that. But I think that you also highlight an important point that there's strengths to, of course, the social media and all that, so certain people are being called out. I just want to quickly move on from that, but before we move on, Professor Mboya, you have a very distinguished career and of course guiding all these students, 6 PhD students, a number of master students. So from your perspective, when you see this ethical value, honesty, I know a lot of universities have code of conduct and they have honesty in work. How are these translating and the accountability with the work? How does this tie into some of the students that you have had the opportunity to be responsible over the work?
Oh, thank you so much, Peter. Now, for students, there is always one aspect that is key to their success, and that is hard work. It is very key to them. And with hard work comes patience, because you find that most of the time students, some students, not all, would like to develop shortcuts in terms of how to achieve the end. Whereas when you want to at least gain immensely in the world of knowledge, it is important to be patient and be able to go through things in details and be able to at least, one of the very, very key things also to be able to know how to share. Because learning process is something that is not individual. It is something that goes across. There's something I know, ones that you have said, there is also the issue of sharing that is very, very key for them to be able to know how to play in terms of getting on together or along in terms of teamwork, so that they can be able to develop something that society appreciates.
That's fantastic, ethical value. I didn't think about that, but it reminds me of a recent or a previous occurrence where my brother was telling me his son, who's my nephew, said that sharing is caring, but it's really tough to share. So it's so true that when you think about it, and as they grow up from that household structure to an academic institution and actually outside in society, a lot of that ability and nurturing of realizing that you have to care beyond just your own individual self, of course, really captures what the author is trying to talk about here, translating those values to making society much better. There's also a very interesting concept here of how different we are, not actually where we are because of our individual aspect. Yeah, so Mr. OBURU, the author here, talks about people who propel you. It would be very interesting to get perspective here. Joe, why don't we start with you, Joseph, in terms of what are some of the relationships? If you think about your distinguished career, you as a father, as a parent, what are some of the things you can probably share with the audience that has propelled you, or people who have influenced you, or even things you're doing to actually propel people?
Yeah, I agree completely with the author that no one is complete individually, so we need to be paired with somebody or to have relationships that support us. In my situation, I would say it's the support structure I got from my family. My parents were very. The thing about life is that it is only later in life you appreciate some of the lessons you learned. But at the time, they can be quite bitter. I was talking to somebody and they were laughing, and they said that when he was a child, he said that he thought people can only die from two things. One was from natural causes, and two was from talking back to his parents. And that is the kind of, but when I look back, I think of some of the things that my parents taught me that only became relevant later in life. And as Professor Kerr was saying, that we should listen to the wisdom of those who have walked the journey before. So I think it's support from the family, my wife and my children. I can also learn from my children. Contrary to what we think, sometimes we feel as parents that we're the purveyors of all the knowledge and we are the only, that knowledge is one way. But I've learned a lot of things. The generation that is coming up are quite conscious of what is happening in society. They see the injustices. They also see some of the hypocrisies that we have as parents, that we say one thing and we do another. And I think that kind of having a feedback and open communication with people around me in my family, and that also holds for some of the friends and colleagues I have met along the way. I think that has helped to shape me, to propel me to where I have come.
Why it starts in the family, and some of the core principles which the author talks about so much. So I think if you go back to where we started actually, in terms of the redefinition of the family, and you shared also some of that, Jerry, is that when that is broken, it really transcends to the society. There's a very interesting discussion here in one of the chapters about super achievers. I think many people sometimes come out from a family where there are many children, or there's a lot of drive, even if it's an individual child, there's a lot of drive of being a super achiever, or that measurement with society. Jerry, what's your view about being a super achiever? Are there pros, are there cons? What's your thought about that?
It's, to be honest, it actually depends on what you are a super achiever on. You could be a super achiever on, things that are really not good. But, there's definitely positives and negatives. But it also just boils down to, who are you as a person as that super achiever? It all goes back to, what values and, are you a role model, right? Such that in your super achieve, in your quest to being a super achiever, are people looking at you and say, I really want to get some of those character traits? But beyond that, then are these character traits really positive for the society? They are definitely pros and cons. On the contrary, then, we have super achievers where, unfortunately, in our country today, they are termed and, really highlighted as super achievers, but you actually question, are they really super achievers? And what did they do to get to that, status of being super achievers? So there definitely are pros and cons. So it could be a good thing, but also could be questionable in terms of what you are doing as a super achiever.
Great, very well noted. So I think it's in line with what the author was saying, Mr. OBURU, just in his remarks, where he said there is a pursuit of wealth, and that pursuit of wealth can get to a point whereby it's detriment to the family. And if you read the book, there are places where it talks about time, and time being critical. So if you're a super achiever, and there's of course a trade-off with time, then of course there's a penalty. There's a penalty, I think, for the family. So what about you, Professor Mboya? There is also a big discussion here in the book where it talks about happiness. Happiness in marriage is not a gift of chance. It is never stumbled into nor obtained by fluke merely because the two have been pronounced husband and wife. Couples who are desirous of happiness in marriage must therefore work for it. Each spouse must exert all effort in the pursuit of happiness. So happiness is a very elusive concept. You know, what are some of your thoughts when you hear about that we have to work for that happiness, and that's critical, you know, in that family structure, starting with the marriage, and then that translates to the whole household, and of course the impact. What's your view on happiness?
Oh, thank you. I think I'm also ambushed with this. Yeah. Now, what I would like to say is that this book made me learn a lot. And I reflected a lot in my life. Oh, I don't need to lie to you. There's a time when we were really going through very hard times, me and my family. And what I could have simply said is that there was turmoil in that particular family. But there's one thing that my wife used to do at that particular point, and I find that she is my super achiever. When these problems came in, she could just kneel down and just be praying. And my side, I could just simply walk out. I just simply go away, and I find myself cooling off. Then later on, I find that we were ready to come back and be able to move up again. So I find that for me, to be a super achiever, there is an element of prayer that is required. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that transparency. I think a number of us have learned, of course, if you have been married over time, there are great seasons and, of course, there are tough seasons. And I think, to your point, I would really second that. I mean, the author really does a lot. Really, when you read this book, there's so many individual chapters that I think all of us can relate to, that are actually a manuscript of how you should live a happy marriage, a manuscript of how you should actually look for a spouse, a manuscript of challenges that you particularly face. So I just want to follow up on that concept of happiness, you know, and hear from Ashley. Ashley, what's your view as a young adult in terms of when you think about happiness? Is that something that is easy to achieve? What are some of your experiences with happiness?
So first of all, I know happiness is considered a feeling, but in actuality, I think it's a choice. That everyone has the capacity to be happy, but that comes from the choices that you make. For example, being around people who don't make you happy, if you choose to continue to stay around them, that's a choice you've made. So at some point, you can no longer blame them for making you unhappy. It's you who's continuing to stay in the presence of people who make you unhappy. For example, also, if it's a career choice, if you're in a job you don't like, I obviously have very limited experience with that, but I assume, you know, other people here would. But if you're in a job that you don't like, then it's your choice to leave or start a new career, for example, that you'd be more interested in. It's your choice to do that, but if you don't do that...
Response right there. It's really creating that environment and showing the children, you know, in this particular environment, one can choose to be happy. Because again, it goes back to that family unit and how are we building that structure for our kids. So that's fantastic. So I want to shift really quickly here. I know we are tracking here very closely on time. Just in closing here, I just want to go around the panel and probably just ask Joe. I can start with you. You know, as having read the book, you've had the author's remarks, Professor Kerr, and the panelists. Just give us some of your thoughts in closing. You know, what's your takeaway from the book? What you've learned, or just something that you can leave the audience with.
Okay. First of all, I would like to commend the author for this book. I think it's very timely and relevant. I will relate it to what I do. So I run the Association of Family Business Enterprises. And this association was created because of the importance of family businesses in the economies all over the world. In Kenya, it is estimated about 80% of the GDP, or the 80% of the GDP in this country comes from family businesses. Yet it is known that family businesses barely last 3 generations. You know, by the 3rd generation, the family business has disappeared. We're also going through the largest transfer of wealth from one generation to the next in the world. And they're saying that about 80% of that wealth will be lost. It is not going to be handed over to the next generation. I think that is mostly because of what is written in this book. Many times we work on businesses, but we never work on the families. We never talk about putting in values and ethics. And the biggest thing plaguing family businesses is succession planning. Many founders do not want to discuss succession. They don't want to consider. We feel that we have an element of immortality. And I think this book, the thing I took away from this book is that if you put in the ethics and values into our children when they're at a young age, they will know what to do. And if it means them assuming a business or taking it over from the founders, then the legacy will continue. We have seen in many other countries, businesses have gone on for 8, even 10 generations. And a lot of it is driven by the foundation that is created. So this book, for me, is relevant at a personal level, but also at a professional level. And I will recommend it to many of the family businesses that are members of our association.
Thank you, Joao. Very profound application, especially in the line of business. Thank you. Let me swing this way to Njeri. What are your thoughts about the book and your final comments for the audience?
First is to say thank you so much, and I'm greatly honored to be part of this panel. I think it is timely with whatever, whatever is happening around us. The world is very, very dynamic. We have seen COVID-19 pandemic, we are seeing, climate change coming. What is the role of the family? How do we define the family? The reason why I say that is that it gives us an opportunity to reflect, and it gives us an opportunity to actually, say, is this what my family is, contributing to the society? Am I preparing my children to be able, to be ethical citizens, to be global citizens? So it gives us that opportunity to have a conversation. And for everybody I have, spoken to about this book, has seen this book, I want to read this book. I want to see and, interact with this so that I can reflect on my experiences as a person in this world, as a parent, as a teacher, and also as a young person. And I would say that it is actually very timely.
Thank you, Jerry. Let me swing back this side to you, Professor Mbeya. What are your final thoughts?
Well, thank you so much, Peter. Let me also take this opportunity to appreciate our esteemed author. Now, when it comes to this book, for a family, it is really a book that I must read. It is a must for the reading. And 2, when it comes to issues regarding pedagogy, there's a lot of touch on pedagogy, on teaching, especially now that the world is turning into World Wide Web. That's what we're using for teaching. You have really told us here about how can we be able to use it ethically and be able to protect the students who are using this particular means of learning. And as you know, when it comes to things to do with illustrations, some of them that we cannot be able to do in 2D over the board, which are 3D or sort of thing, it is the internet that can help the students. But again, what is embedded in there is too huge that it requires you to develop ethic in yourself as a student, and also parents to be able to at least guide the children in terms of the usage of the internet, and also due to the fact that the security that we are having currently, even in our homes, where we're using security, there is the issue of having us being monitored even here where we are seated. So it is vital even in security, but the ethical part of it is what is still lacking. And I find that the book is touching a lot of that, and it can be able to teach us exactly how to be able to go around that field. Thank you so much.
Fantastic, thank you. And Ashley, you kicked us off with the first question. How about you close us off? What are your thoughts about when you read the book and our discussion? What are your final reflections?
So on reading the book, I think the author has done a fantastic job in saving us from the grips of Western influence. So the focus of the book is on children and passing the baton to children, but within the Western influence and ideals, their idea of success or reproductive success is when their children are wealthy or have good jobs. That is the focus of what it means to have a successful child, or they've done well in school. But the author reminds us of our traditional African roots, in which children were taught life skills or taught moral values, character, integrity. That is what they were instructed in, and that is what they were raised in. So you knew you had a successful child when they were a good and contributing member to society. They were a good person. And I think the author has just really reminded us of the importance of going back and educating children, not just by books or academics, but by the kind of people they should be, because society would be nothing if you only had geniuses or superachievers, but there were people of no character, of no integrity. And I really appreciate the author for just bringing that back to our generation's attention, so we can go back to the roots that we came from, instead of going towards a world that doesn't have the same ideals as we do as Africans.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ashley. I'll just close off by saying that, thank you. I'll just close off by saying that, when I think about the title of this book, Passing the Baton, I just recently, a couple of days ago, I was back to the countryside where I come from. My parents and I come from in Rusinga Island. And I had an opportunity, which was very interesting, just to go back to where my ancestors are, my granddad and my grandmothers who are laid to rest there. And I was thinking, I was reflecting about this book, and it's really timely, thinking about the baton, And I was looking at the homestead, and I was thinking when I was a very young kid, and going up country and seeing my granddad, going there with my dad and my mom, and that generation has passed. So when I reflect it and I think about what the author was saying, that we are in a relay race, and the baton is coming. And for the author here, Mr. OBURU, who is my dad, the baton was passed to him, and he had to, of course, carry that within his household. Then I was also conflicted about the issue of the redefinition of the family, because that's really the basis of the structure of the book. But I came to realize that, the family can be redefined, but your particular family doesn't have to be redefined. And the book is very interesting because it offers not only the discussion of all these items, but it's also very prescriptive in what you have to do to ensure that your family is not being redefined. And I think key to that is a lot of discussion, a lot of acceptance and learning. I think all of us have said that, a lot of acceptance and learning. So I would really encourage people to really spend time. It is a read that I don't think it's a one-time read. It's a continual thing that there's so much to learn, and you can always go back to it. So I really want to say thank you very much to the author. What a fantastic book, and it's, that you can recommend to your friends and also to future generations. So it has been great and fantastic. And I also, in the spirit of the family structure, I would also like to extend a great gratitude to my wife, who is not here today, Jennifer OBURU, who was part of coming up with these questions and putting together this distinguished panel. So I thank you very much to my wife, Jennifer OBURU. And then a big thank you very much to the distinguished panelists. Thank you very much, Joe. I really appreciate you participating in the panel. Professor Mboya, thank you very much for your discussion here. Ms. Njeri, thank you very much for your discussion. And of course, Ashley, fantastic discussion. So thank you very much. Thank you all. And then at this time, we want to ask Ms. Rosa Pondo, Dr. Rosa Pondo is going to come and give some brief comments about the book, and then we'll transition to the next stage. Thank you all. Good? Okay.
Invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I think I also have some bragging rights. I started writing a book, a novel, in 2014. I'm still on chapter 3. It's not a mean feat that has been achieved, you know, and the reason why we are here today. And when I was asked by, allow me to call him Uncle, because that's who I call him. He's always been not Uncle Solomon, but Uncle Sulman. I don't know why, but I found him as Uncle Sulman, and that is how we've called him all this time in our family. So when he asked me to do the reflections on passing the baton, I was wondering, really, what angle would I take? And as we've heard from the introductions and the panel discussions, many of the speakers have focused so much on the content of the text, which is a good thing, because really we are so concerned with the thoughts that Uncle had to put onto paper. So allow me to take just a slightly different angle in these reflections and talk first about the journey of this particular book. And I remember way back, I think, Uncle, 2012, is when we began the conversations around this book. And they took place during our frequent visits with my husband, Apollo Cigar, and our children, when they were still young, to Uncle's home. And frankly speaking, in those visits, I looked forward more to Mama's Osuga and the tea, which was marvelous. But then Uncle would always find a way of taking me off the kitchen and sitting me down, and he would always start this way. Allow me to speak in the first language, because that's how he always started it. He would say, "To min Brian, unejok moso mubuk. Angomo mio." Then I put the quotation marks. So loosely translated, he will start by saying, "Mama Brian, you are the people who have read books. Why is it that?" So his conversations would always begin with that question. Why is it that? And then without realizing, I would realize that we have actually spent more than an hour talking about many of the aspects that today we read in Passing the Baton. So with that, I must say it was a very fantastic journey, a very inspiring journey. The first time he gave me the manuscript, the raw manuscript, it was titled Raising Succession. Then eventually he changed the title into Family Succession. And then lastly, we have Passing the Baton. So you can see the revisions that the book has undergone, not just in content, but also in the conceptualization of what really am I talking about. So I think for me, it is to join the other speakers who have spoken before me in really congratulating Uncle Solomon OBURU for the wonderful work that we have before us today as Passing the Baton. Now, my other reflection will be on the work itself. And I believe that this work, the reason why it drew me in and I started working on it, by the way, part of what I did on this work was the language. How many of us have had to get a dictionary after reading a page or two of this work? Confession time? Yes, but the dictionary visits have not been very frequent, and you can have me to thank for that. I think I could spend weeks trying to, get the easier equivalent of his vocabulary. Uncle has, that knack for using very, very bombastic words, very, very difficult words. And words that you don't use in ordinary conversations. But they mean a lot to him, and he uses them well. Many times some of us use these words out of context, but not him. He uses them well. But I kept pleading with him that if you want a general readership for this book, some of these words have to be simplified. So we have to look for the simpler synonyms. And I want to say thank you to Uncle because he accepted 3/4 of my corrections. The other quarter, he refused and said it has to stay. So that's your battle. You have to battle with the language. When we come to the work, I think what really inspired me about this work is that it's not just another quick fix motivation book. It's not 10 ways to have a successful family, 7 secrets of a successful society. But it is a book that opens up the space for the debate on the current state of the family as the predeterminant of the state of the society. What kind of family do we have now? So he interrogates that. And what is the ideal family then? Then he goes ahead and interrogates the same. So he's inviting us into a conversation. He's inviting us into a dialogue, first with ourselves as parents, as future parents, and then with the collective psyche as a society. What kind of family or what kind of society do we want? When I was reading the entire book now, I came up with something. Maybe we can pass a few. I could only make a few copies. Sorry for that. I thought we'd have a projector, but I was informed a bit late that it is outdoors. So there are a few copies of this. I think someone can pass them around. I just tried to do, typical of a teacher, a conceptual framework of this text. And for those who have the copies, we'll share them. You see, for me, it still begins with the society, not the family. It still begins with the society. From the society, we have the spouse and the spouse. The two come together in a marriage, and then in the marriage, when we have children, we have the family. Now, through the process of nurture, the family offers the basic education to the children. And the education will be three-pronged. We have knowledge, values, and skills at the basic level. And then later on, these are formed into adults who Uncle calls the social agents. And through a process of social participation, they go back now to become members of the society. So this is just a way of telling us it begins with the society, it ends with the society, but in the middle, there's a very, very important agency, and that is the family. I want to maybe wind up by, okay, start winding up. This is my first closing. So just reflecting on something that used to happen when one of my children was very small in primary school. He was in a boarding primary school. And whenever we took them to school on opening days, we always had to queue, and every one of us would be checked for the content of what the children have carried. So if it was sweaters, he had to have three pairs of shorts, 3 shirts, and so on and so forth. But what would happen is that some parents would not have the complete sets of the requirement. So what would they go ahead and do? The honest ones will say, Mwalimu, okay, I've just discovered he doesn't have this. Please give me time to sort it out. But majority, this is what they did. They borrowed the missing items from other parents, got checked with them, and then after they were checked in, they returned those items. Ladies and gentlemen, what is that teaching the child? So we agree with the author of this book that it all begins in the family. The thief comes from a family. I'm sorry to say, the prostitute comes from a family. Just as the engineer, the successful doctor, also comes from a family. So it all begins and ends with the family. And that is why this book is important for us today, to find out what kind of family, first of all, do we want for ourselves. I'm at the university and at the public university. And what we see really is nothing short of a disaster in terms of the morals of our children. And it is very disheartening. And sometimes, you know, as a parent who wants to be a responsible parent, you just feel like taking someone's child and putting them across your knees and giving them 2 or 3. But of course, you know, you can land yourself in jail. But it is really a wanting situation. And that brings me, because I don't want to say much about the content of the text, it has been said before, that brings me to the last part of why we are here today. And I title it, What Now? Okay? Not the other way would be, now what? It's not now what, but it is, what now? We have the book. It has been published. What is the next step? What do we do after this? For the author, what does he do? Does he sit pretty? Of course, he has achieved something great in life that many of us don't, because he now has a book that affords him being quoted Today you can write an article and quote OBURU 2019, isn't it? That's what we scholars aspire for, that somebody can quote you. And today we have academia, always telling you have 30 mentions, and then you just congratulate yourself. So the author has joined that ilk of people who can be quoted. But now what? I like a conversation I had with him about a day ago when he was talking about a second edition of this book, a revised edition of this book, because he says he has just learned so many things that have now come to his attention after writing the book. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that should be a challenge for us, especially the young who still have the energy to read and to write. We've been given a challenge that we must read, and we must just bring ourselves to speed with what is going on around us. If you read this book, definitely you'll bear me witness that Uncle has read a lot. What now? Also for those of us who have read this particular text. What do we do with 3 hours if that's very short? But thank you so much, and please, let's do the honors that this book deserves by making sure that this information goes out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Opondo. Thank you, and thank you for being right on time with the remarks. Appreciate that. We are tracking very closely on time. Remember that I said I'm also the timekeeper. So we are just 15 minutes over, but we can redeem some time here. I want to ask Mr. Quacker. Mr. Quacker wrote reflections of the book. If Mr. Quacker is around, probably give him a brief 2 minutes, and also ask Mr. Kennedy if you can also stand by. Mr. Kennedy standing right next to you, Mr. Quacker, after your 2 minutes. So he's going to be tracking on closing. So if you can bear with us another 10 minutes, we'll be wrapping up here. Then we shall get to actually the book signing. We'll have a cake cutting. Everybody loves a cake for celebration. And then we will get to actual book signing. And I know that we have also been seated for a while. There's some refreshment and some snacks for us to partake of. So a brief 2 minutes, Mr. Quacker. Thank you.
I'm sorry to say I will disappoint you a little bit.
Okay.
Because the author asked me to review the book.
Okay. Maybe we'll allow you 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I've had the privilege of interacting with the author for some time now. As a matter of fact, I was introduced to him by Mzee Andrew Ogot, who told me that if I wanted somebody who is really an intellectual out of universities, then I should go to Mr. Solomon OBURU. So Mr. Solomon OBURU is one of the greatest intellectuals of our time, who is not a lecturer, who is not a scholar, who is not in an institution of higher learning. Now, I've reviewed the book because that is what I was asked to do by the author, and it goes this. First, I want to express my gratitude for the privilege accorded me to be part of this auspicious occasion when we are launching Passing the Baton by R. Solomon OBURU. The author is my elder friend and mentor. Indeed, I do consider myself a protege of the author, Elder Solomon OBURU. The book speaks to us about success and succession, where the focus is on the family as the facilitator and society as the beneficiary. The author Passing the Baton raises our attention to the need to think seriously about succession, especially at family level with regard to the values and character we bequeath to the future generation. When we are aware that we will pass the baton, it behoves us to nurture, train, and prepare the prospective successor. The author affirms the institution of marriage as the vessel that carries the process of nurturing the successor. He asserts that family, a product of marriage, is the apex institution for training successors, and also focus on other things but character, values, and succession. When you read Passing the Baton, you feel guilty and you somewhat find that you have been walking on the surface of the earth, rudderless, visionless, and planless. The author enlightens us that there is a difference between success and succession. Success is terminated at tenure, while succession is tenure transferable. The author points us to the succession of a virtuous character. On success, the author is not merely talking about material wealth. His broad view of success includes character, values, integrity, conscience, etc. And the success, the author says, should be generational. From the first paragraph of the book, the author swiftly provides a flexible, inclusive definition of family in the contemporary times. As one reads the book, one may be mistaken to think that the author is advocating for the family to be the exclusive social institution to provide the foundation for societal growth and progress without taking cognizance of the inevitability of single parenthood, institutions like children's homes, and other forms of raising children. On the contrary, the writer advocates for inclusivity and embracing of all who, for one reason or another, does not stop short of asserting that for society to regenerate itself and for the baton to be passed appropriately. And in accord with God's original design, the family, he says, still remains the institution for raising the children. In passing the baton, the problem is presented that the increasing threats to the institution of marriage and therefore the erosion of family stability is an existential threat to the fabric in which succession takes place as society perpetuates itself. Even though a remedial prescription is accorded only some transient energy in the book, the author makes tangential reference to the appropriate actions such as investing in or allocating quality time for the family and deliberate effort to raise children as responsible citizens. And of course, when the bad is well illuminated in the book as it has been done, the reader should have no difficulty in inferring the good. The takeaway message for the reader is that success without succession is as good as stillbirth. A Luo cultural scenario is presented in the book to illustrate this point. It could as well be something that is in all communities, that there is happiness when there is perpetuation of bloodline through progenies. In the Luo community, when a newly married woman tells her mother-in-law that she did not see blood as she was expecting, the old woman says, "Come, let's go into the house and pray and thank God." After that, the newly married woman goes to her own mother, passes the same message that she did not see the blood, and the good news spreads, if you know what I'm talking about. When someone dies, we say he is survived by a widow and children, don't we? We don't say he is survived by material wealth of 50 million in his bank account, real estate, motor vehicles, and such. Survived by is synonymous with continued through so and so. That's the language. Or preserved through so and so. That's the meaning of survived by. Succession is inalienable. It is lineal, and in some cases dynastic. If succession has to be accomplished, it has to be the right to the right person with a virtuous character. I want to emphasize that. If succession has to be accomplished in a family or in a nation, in the leadership of a nation or community, it has to be to the right person with a virtuous character. I want to draw your attention to somebody who said recently in a certain country, which you are all familiar with, that he was not ready to be succeeded by a thief. For the person to acquire a virtuous character, that person who is going to be the successor, he or she should have been brought up in a family of responsible and caring parents during the formative stages of between 3 to 10 years. I have only 2 minutes. Just like in any work of this kind, there are some provocative and somewhat controversial statements in the book. Examples are there. And yet, these are very welcome. Those controversial and challenging statements are very welcome, for such a book is an expression of a school of thought, and it would not serve the purpose if it was not dialectic. It would not be as challenging as to think if it did not trigger debate. A book is at its best when it triggers debate, and this book does very well. In conclusion, from my perspective, Passing the Baton is the most edifying and didactic book in its category of targeted audience. Anytime would want to, everybody in that category would like to read. Chapter 2, for instance, has deep lessons on marriage, and the last 2 chapters of the book, that is chapter 7 and chapter 8, are very inspirational and revitalizing. I sincerely recommend Passing the Baton as a must-read for all who want to gain insight into this subject of success and succession. But even as we celebrate the launch of Passing the Baton, you will agree with me that the challenge of succession among those who are about to pass the baton is as big as it is a challenge among those who the baton is being passed to. So my little observation on passing the baton is that it is a challenge to us and to the author and anybody else that there should be a sequel to Passing the Baton that directly addresses those who are being passed the baton to. Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'd been asked by the author to do review. I'm not going to do that right now. I will send him the email. But I just wanted to point a few things for the 2 minutes. One, that the book finds that the daycare is a correct answer to the wrong question in terms of character formation and in terms of parenting and parentage and child rearing. I also found that this book, some books are worth skimming, others we just read the title, but some books are worth taking time and digging deeper. For example, this book has raised the discourse that a family is not held together by law. And this is very disappointing for us as lawyers, but by love, peace, understanding, care, and support. I think that is profound. I have also found in the book, as I conclude, that training about life itself is to help us understand why we are looking for bread, that life is supposed to nourish. So the book goes through the whole value chain for people who do business, the value chain from marriage to society to child growth to adulthood, and throughout the value has a strong sense of community. I think, and the book underscores, that there is a lot of heartbreaking, lack of fulfilled vision. In fact, I had commented that some family and the current world has become a valley of broken dreams and the agony and the disappointment. But the book gives very strong, practical examples. 2 things, in my view, that the next chapter or the next book should have. OBURU, you did not give us ADR, or how to resolve family dispute. I think that could marriages.
find a space for that, because I know you have power to do that, so that we cannot straitjacket all families to one sense, and because we know that a family can do that. Finally, complete. I think there is a role for the stories that you have shared with us about family. For example, whenever I'm tired of his call, I tell him, after all, it's your daughter who brought me to you. And he gets very offended. How can a big person like me be told that I was brought by Pamela? But he has given me, for example, the story of how he has made it a tradition to visit grandchildren's school the first day when they go to college. We expect these stories from heart to heart. How, when my friends were in high school and they were suspended from Strathmore School, high school, because they refused to enter Catholic chapel, how you decided not to talk as a father, but you drove them to the central church and told them, talk to your pastor, and let that pastor find a church, a school equal to that. And the pastor, Margaret Olude, Margaret Ogola, I felt the same excitement that when I read The River and the Source, that story and how it went, and I'm looking at passing the baton. I think they're twins, only that now here, you have given us the scripture, you have given us the values. Add to us those good kachumbari, for example, Da Ken Lau Yuach. We want it in your next book. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. So, Mama OBURU is going to hand over the gifts to the panelists in appreciation of the role that you played today. We really appreciate the role that you played. So, yeah, so just face the other side. Yeah. And move to this. Thank you, Ashley. Now it is Njeri Moy. Oh, sorry. Our understanding of the subject. I would also like to call upon Professor Kerr to come and receive a token of appreciation. Professor Kerr, apart from being among the guests today, has a long history with Mzee. So I would like to call upon him to come and receive his token. Dr. Opondo, also kindly come. Paul is the first among the sons. My wife is actually the firstborn in the family, followed by Paul, and then Pamela, and then Ezekiel, and then Peter, and then William, and then Joanne is the last one. Pardon? Oh, Boniface. Boniface is the husband to Pamela. He's also here with us. Thank you very much. So we are very grateful for that. So after this, what we are going to do, we are going to have a session where we are going to cut the cake in commemoration of the launch of this book. In the meantime, as we prepare to cut the cake, the panelists just come and take one group picture here with the family, with Mzee. Okay, I think, no, it's better. We'll take the picture after the cake is cut. Yeah, with the panelists. So,
Thank you all. I've been asked to cut the cake, but symbolically, cake is chakula. And in the society I come from, thanks again, I've been asked to cut the cake. Okay, thank you. I've been asked to cut the cake. Cake is kuon in the Luo. And for a Jaluo, it doesn't matter what meal you are given if there is no kuon. In other words, if there is no cake, you have gone to bed hungry. But men do not prepare the kuon. So I have the opportunity now to introduce my wife of Proverbs 31, those that like the Bible, my wife of 2 Peter 3. Go read those ones, and they are available in the book. She will help me to cut the cake. Otherwise, when I go back, my community will send me away. Thank you all. We can now eat the book.
Yeah. Okay, so the cake will be cut and passed around, as we continue. But after this, we shall have an opportunity to partake of refreshments which have been served out there. There is sitting place, but also we can mingle in the process. So I would also like to take this opportunity, now that I have the microphone, I cannot forget my relatives, because they are also close members of this family. My parents, you are there, just wave. Yeah, stand and wave. Yeah, and also another close relative is Mr. Philip Okundi, who is the father to Barry Okundi, who is the husband to Joanne. So Mr. Okundi is sitting right in front of us. Yeah. Thank you very much. So now I would like to request the panelists to come and take a photo before we proceed outside for refreshments. Where are the panelists? So they'll take the photo outside, and then after that, the rest will follow. You take here or outside? Okay, here. Okay, here. Okay.
chapter. This now we tell people to include from here. Then we'll also get the other people out.
Invite people to come and stream out in the back. If this organization will take long, then make it for
now invite people.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. As the photo session goes on, I would like to invite the rest to stream out so that we can have the refreshments. The refreshments are served, so for those who are at the back, you can. And in addition, the author will be here to sign the books. So there are those who had already acquired the books earlier. They can be signed for you. And for those who acquire the books now, he'll also be at hand to sign the books for you. So just before we step out, maybe Pamela can say a quick prayer for the food.
Okay, let's bow our heads and pray for the food. Just quickly before we take the photos, thank you. Dear Lord in heaven, we want to thank you for this day. We want to thank you for all our friends and family who have come. We pray that you bless the food before we partake it. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
So it's now time for us to get the refreshments and mingle and interact, after which we shall be at liberty to leave once we have already interacted enough with those who are present, including interacting with the author. Thank you very much. Once again, thank you all for gracing this occasion. Thank you. So the book signing is going to take place on this desk here. So if you have a book that you'd like to be signed.
I just want to angle it. That's good enough so that I can see whoever is coming, and then just angle it that way.
Ameangusha bendera, anaweza chukua.
of the altar. Yes. Yes. And let me join them. Let me join them here. Yeah, show the book. Let's just hold 1 second. 1 second. Okay, we just hold one together. There you go. Here's your book. From us.
Niekelewa hapa kwa box ya speakers fulani. I think when hapa
Yes.
No, just need you can confirm here too.
There you go. Smiling. Big one. Oh, that is fantastic. Thank you so much. Yes, there you go. No, that can say I can't put it like that. That is cool. Oh yeah, I can call and we can discuss back. But yeah, if it is first thing to be like a law, there are much the US federal law as a master. You have to do your program so cost program. That's the disadvantage. But if you want to go on some of these tracks, we can go to rather than pay them. So they have so much money. So that's why yes. So therefore, she's there. Congratulations. Yeah, my goodness. Yeah. That's amazing. Oh no, she's fine. She's coming this far. She's finished. She's in the final lap. No, it's just about talking away. Yeah, just let it alone. Yeah, she's in the final lap. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Thank you so much. Yes, you're right. Thank you so much. Thank you. Called after Uncle Collins, went to the same school. Uncle called Dr. Collins, yeah, he went to the same school. Yes, a great school. Yeah, next to, right there, next to Vicky. I don't know I said Vicky. Yeah, he was a nice singer. Yeah, I had not seen that. I never met the husband. Yes, it was really nice to go. I went, I drove there with the shoot to hear me. It was really nice. Yeah. It was fantastic. I love it. Okay, yes.